everyone, and welcome to Energy Talks. My name is Asha Sumputh, and today I'm taking you to Africa, where a new generation of entrepreneurs is powering change. From bold solar startups bringing electricity to off-grid villages, to tech innovators redefining access to electric mobility. These entrepreneurs aren't just waiting for transformation to happen, they are driving it. So the question is, how are local solutions transforming Africa's energy landscape? Let's find out. And to explore this, I'm joined today by two remarkable voices shaping this transformation. Cécile Maisonneuve, who is an expert in energy geopolitics and innovation. Cécile, it's great to see you. How are you?
I'm fine. Great to be here. Thank you, Asha.
Fantastic. Thank you for being here. And Pascal Murasira, who is an ecosystem builder, entrepreneur, supporting African startups and scaling local solutions across the continent. Have I missed out something?
No, actually, you described it perfect.
It's great to have you, Pascal.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Fantastic. So before we start, maybe let's start just with a quick reality check. A few figures very quickly. We know Africa is home to almost 600 million people without reliable electricity, and that's nearly half of the continent's population. And in sub-Saharan Africa alone, the number is 565 million. This is like 85% of electricity deficit globally in the whole world. So we know there are like some imbalance between urban and rural. Access are lowest in some of the countries like South Sudan, Chad, Malawi, Niger, where electrification rates are still below 20%, quite shocking. So my question, Cécile, to you is, with 500 million people still in the dark, where do you see the urgency and the priority?
Well, thank you, Asha, for reminding us about the figures, because they are quite impressive. And the equivalent of the population of the US and the EU without access to electricity. So the answer was in your question. When we look at the map of rural access to electricity, there lies the priority, the absolute priority, I would say, because we are talking about 32% of people not having access to electricity. And why is it important? It's important because there is a very strong link between electrification and GDP growth, even in countries with a lot of fossil fuel resources. And it's also important because electrification is definitely an enabler for food security, an enabler for quality jobs, and it really, really multiplies the efforts in terms of education, health, investment. So there lies the absolute priority in the coming decade.
Absolutely critical. So Pascal, I would like you just to probably just react to what you heard from Cécile, and any thoughts?
Oh, absolutely. I love the idea of that Cécile advanced of rural electrification. I'll give you an example. Like when I was growing up in Rwanda, we did not have electricity. It was until like 5 years ago that my home village got access to electricity. But when I go back today and look at the change that has happened in those 5 years, it's phenomenal. We see new jobs popping up, new businesses popping up. People with phones no longer having to travel miles and kilometers to go charge their phones to the nearest town, so they can do that in their own households. That's a massive change. The kids being able to do their homework in the evening, that was not possible when I was growing up. So massive change that happens when people in rural areas get access to electricity.
Yeah, it's a lifeline. And I will get back to that part with you, Pascal. So maybe, Cécile, how is Africa's energy mix expected to evolve by 2030? Maybe we are seeing renewables and new technologies scaling up quite fast. So what is your take?
Yeah, I think fast is a good word. What's growing fast first is demand for energy. We are talking about 80% more demand between now and 2030. So it's really tomorrow. Second trend, which is quite interesting, is, you said it, is the growth in renewable sources of energy. Definitely renewable energy sources will be the backbone of the energy system in Africa. We are talking already in some countries about the majority of electricity being produced from renewables. Third interesting trend, and very interesting one, is that the decrease, of course, of fossil fuel resources in this mix with a very, very good news, which is a progressive phase out of coal, which is truly important. Last not least, if investments are made at the right pace, we can close the gap of electrification in Africa in the coming decade. So this is very important, provided investments happen at the right pace.
That's a great insight. And I was about to ask you, what are the opportunities? Where do you see the opportunities to really close that gap?
Oh, absolutely. Again, I agree with you, Cécile. The issue of access to capital, so financing, and it's not just like for public sector or large corporations that are facing funding challenges in Africa, but also the young entrepreneurs, those innovators that are also building solutions in energy solutions, making sure that the capital, those investments also reach them with the right conditions, not just giving you money, but with conditions that make it almost impossible to invest and use those funds. So availability of capital, and also having that capital being available also to the young entrepreneurs, not just like large corporations and the governments.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Pascal. I think let's ground this with an example, a quick example from Zimbabwe, where mobile solar kits have been developed actually to help off-grid farmers secure power and optimize irrigation. Let's take a look.
Our solution is mobile solar containers for off-grid farmers, which uses AI to make irrigation more efficient. We weren't guaranteed work after university, and we saw that energy poverty was at the root cause of this issue across the continent. Around 600 million people in sub-Saharan Africa do not have access to electricity, meaning that farmers are highly dependent on rainfall for irrigation. But water is scarce with drought. This is why we developed gridbox.
The mini grids are portable, so can be moved and used where they are needed, and bypass long construction time normally needed to bring electricity infrastructure to these areas. These smart chips use AI-driven precision farming techniques, optimizing irrigation schedules and water usage.
That was a great example in Zimbabwe, but we are seeing similar projects a little bit everywhere across Africa. I've seen similar examples in Senegal, Malawi, Kenya. And the question is, Pascal, looking at this example today, have you seen similar innovations in Rwanda or Eastern Africa that you can share with us, and maybe the impact on livelihoods?
Oh, absolutely. Not only in Rwanda and in East Africa, but one example that I'm really a big fan of is an entrepreneur that I work with in Mauritania. So she is developing a concept of watering hubs where nomadic farmers can bring their animals, their cows, to drink. And how does she get the water on those hubs? So she collects water from River Senegal and sends the water, pumps the water to that hub using those solar energy.
That's brilliant.
And that's not only bringing economic activity to those villages where those hubs are located, but also potential solving other crises, other challenges that those communities have, especially with the conflict between cattle farmers and crop farmers. And this kind of impact goes beyond just like providing...
resolving conflicts, for example.
Making sure that people have food, but also preventing those conflicts that are deadly, especially in the Sahel region.
Absolutely. And you mentioned agriculture, which is really critical, employing like 60% of Africa's workforce. Yeah. And we see that only 6% of farmland irrigated. Solar irrigation isn't just like energy solution. It's here. We're talking about a food security lifeline. This is exactly what you're saying. So Pascal, we know that entrepreneurs have their role to play in driving these solutions, really, and they can't do it alone, and they need to have like infrastructures, people behind. So in Kigali, I know that you've helped build an incubator. So tell us from experience, what do hubs accelerate most effectively? Is it technology, market access, financing? What can you tell us?
Yeah, actually, I call them innovation hubs because the innovation hub also means like you can also have like incubators. So basically entrepreneurs that have an idea, they bring the idea to the incubator to be nurtured, to become an actual business that can scale and serve millions of people. But also you have like accelerators that accelerate businesses that are already established. You have lawyers, you have accountants, you have investors, you have even sometimes policymakers. Like in Kigali, we had, for example, a representative from the tax authorities, even from immigration.
Having like a one-stop shop, like we have everything in the same place.
Absolutely. So having all these supporting ecosystem around the entrepreneur makes it easier for these entrepreneurs to survive, especially in those early days. And of course, like these hubs also are channels for capital, because investors, they know they will find entrepreneurs there. But also, again, like speaking of infrastructure, you need those kind of spaces where entrepreneurs can come and work, knowing that there will be always reliable energy, reliable internet.
Yes, Cécile, this is what we need, right? If you want to go one step ahead.
Yeah, definitely. What is very interesting in what Pascal is describing is that we see kind of hybridation between two revolutions, digitalization, electrification, and the very, I would say, basics of this is decentralization, because both systems enable people to be empowered with a very important fuel, and we mentioned it, it's capital, of course, and access to money.
Yeah.
Right. I was going just to ask you that question on what are the challenges? Do you have a bottleneck that, just that still holds entrepreneurs behind?
Oh, definitely capital. So worldwide, entrepreneurs, especially the young entrepreneurs, the startups, they need capital. But when it comes to Africa, that challenge even becomes worse. So there is less funding going into startups in Africa. And even when you drill inside, like looking at the statistics of who is getting that capital, you realize that, for example, women who are some of the best entrepreneurs we have on the continent, they even get less funding. So if we can solve that funding issue for these entrepreneurs, it would be a massive enabler for these innovations.
Thank you, Pascal. Let's now shift to mobility, where new models are changing how rural Africa moves. So in Zimbabwe, there's a startup called Mobility for Africa, designing electric tricycles that replace costly fuel transport, empowering women farmers and small businesses. Take a look.
In the continent, we have a serious problem where women, predominantly women, many of them small-scale farmers, spend hours of their day in drudgery, carrying heavy loads. What we're trying to do is solve this problem that's not just affecting rural women here in Zimbabwe, but across the continent. We've introduced an e-tricycle, and we've developed a very bespoke battery run off an off-grid mini-grid system. And this allows women to carry 300 to 400 kg, getting their tomatoes to the field, getting their kids vaccinated, being more productive.
Chakandichinjira inini ndiri munhu aimirira kazhinji pay yababa. Izvezvizvi ndakungokwanisa kutongoti zvisipo ndogona kungotenga iwo pawanena mukana wozochinditumidzira.
This is absolutely amazing. I've myself witnessed lots of projects like these, like one in Congo. There was a startup working ladies. There were like 10,000 women empowered in working and delivering products, services. It's great. And I know there are many of them all around Africa. So Cécile, maybe from your perspective, what are the key conditions needed to scale really these kind of women-driven, impact-led energy models successfully across the continent?
Well, this example is very interesting, but when we talk about empowering women in Africa in energy projects, we are talking about one of the biggest engines for growth, innovation, and scaling. Why am I saying that? Because, figures which is not very well known, but very interesting. Women in Africa are leading 27% of new businesses. This is the highest rate in the world. But when you look at these figures and you compare to the amount of money coming to them, it's only 5 or 10%.
Yeah.
So this is a gap we have to close. And this goes through the kind of accelerators you're describing, and even what we call tailored accelerators adapted to women. So closing these gaps require, of course, having the right networks of incubators, exactly what Pascal is describing. But this is truly one of the key issues for accelerating electricity access and also clean cooking access.
Right. So Pascal, I'm sure that you have supported these kind of businesses. What can you say about it? How can we scale it? How can we accelerate that? What can we do more?
Absolutely. Actually, Cécile mentioned a very crucial point. There's a lot less capital going to women entrepreneurs. In general, there is less capital going to innovators in Africa, but when it comes to women, it even gets worse. We had a project that's targeted at female founders, and we ran this project for 3 years. And what we noticed was that actually, besides the capital, which is, of course, critical, that Cécile already talked about it. Another important element is actually to also find successful women as role models and bring them to these accelerators, to these incubators, to talk and encourage and motivate these up-and-coming female
and I'm sure there are so many of them.
Oh, they are, absolutely. But because of all these systematic challenges that female entrepreneurs face, capital being on top of all of them, it's important to bring those other women that have already gone through that hustle and have succeeded to show these younger up-and-coming
mentorship.
Mentorship that it is possible. Like you can do it irrespective of the challenges you are facing left and right.
Pascal, this is great. And this leads me to my next question, Cécile. If you had like one piece of advice to give to Pascal, really, and this new incubator, what should be his top priority?
Well, piece of advice, I don't know, but certainly what I dream about is replicating. Because very often we think that innovating is the top of the top, for sure. But today, when it comes to energy solutions for Africa, we know the solution, pay-as-you-go model, decentralized renewable energy system, and then we need to replicate. So thanks to what Pascal is doing, these kind of incubators, this is really the right recipe to do it again, and to disseminate all this accumulated experience, all these successes also. You're mentioning quite an impressive success story, to replicate them throughout the continent.
Right. I have a couple of questions for both of you. This is what I call the fire round. So are you ready?
Sure.
Definitely.
Yes, Cécile, you go first. You're lucky. So let's go. So short answers, very swift.
Yes.
So in 10 years, will Africa be energy self-sufficient?
Self-sufficient, yes. Enough energy, no. We need to accelerate and invest more.
What's Africa's biggest edge in the global energy race?
Huge demand, huge opportunities.
Is gas still part of Africa's growth story? Yes or no?
Yes, and yes.
Private capital or public funding, which drives change faster?
Public funding to trigger, private to expand.
Okay. If you had to pick one country that will lead Africa in renewables, which one would it be?
Oh, because of the scale, South Africa, definitely.
Okay. Right. Pascal, ready?
Yes.
Okay, let's go. Is Made in Africa energy tech ready to scale globally?
Yes, actually, it is already happening.
Okay, love the energy. So who's leading the race? Policymakers, investors, or innovators?
Innovators, always.
Agreed.
And the policies follow.
Is talent still the biggest bottleneck in scaling energy solutions?
No, actually have enough talent. What they need is resources to help them scale their innovations.
And if you had $1 million to back one energy idea tomorrow, would it be hardware or software?
It will be software. It's much easier to scale.
Okay. Is the next big energy disruptor already on the continent?
Oh, absolutely. She's probably already prototyping in Nairobi.
I love it. So that was brilliant. So just to wrap it up, just one final question to both of you. So what are you hoping with all these local solutions, all this revolution around clean energy and all the entrepreneurial spirit that we're seeing on the continent? What is the one thing you're hoping for?
So my hope, if I may go first, my hope is that the world sees the potential in these young entrepreneurs that are working hard to solve local challenges. So the solutions to African energy is not going to come from outside, but from the people that are already experiencing those problems. So those are people that need to be backed, and I hope the world sees that more.
Fantastic. Cécile?
Well, for me, my hope is that we stop talking about energy in terms of poverty problems, but in terms of opportunities. Because we have shown it, I think, it's really the place where it happens, where decarbonation, access to electricity, and where entrepreneurship with digitalization, electrification is happening. So definitely a lot of opportunities.
And that wraps up this episode of Energy Talks. So today we've seen that Africa's energy future rests on bold innovation, but also on smart investment. Maybe some key takeaways here. Entrepreneurs accelerating faster than ever. We've seen that. Local talent and homegrown manufacturing are unlocking resilience. And when businesses, investors, and policymakers work together, energy becomes opportunity. electricity, and this is what you mentioned earlier. Thank you so much, Cécile and Pascal, for being our guest on this episode. It was great to have you.
Thank you, Asha.
Thank you for having us.
Fantastic. And thank you to all of you for watching, and see you next time for a new episode of Energy Talks.